Welcome to VCR, a vintage cinema rewind. We're bringing old movies to new viewers.
I'm Jason.
And I'm Blake. And I'm really excited to talk about this movie, this month in general.
Yeah.
We're doing our first ever Directors Month, kind of taking a deeper dive into one specific director's frame of work, and maybe even following that director as they've changed and grown over time. And that's kind of what we've done here with doing Thief as our first movie and what we're going to discuss today. And
it was his first movie.
And it was his first feature film debut, yeah. And then after that, we're going to do Heat, probably his most famous work after that, and compare and contrast them.
Awesome. Yeah, it's going to be pretty fun.
Yeah, have you watched Heat yet?
No, I haven't.
Okay, nice. I really liked Heat, and I'm excited to rewatch it in the next week or so.
Yeah, and like really get into it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And just pick up on things that I didn't pick up on before, because that's something that I want to talk about today, and I think it's really important with a movie like Thief. There's a lot of detail that went into the movie Thief, and I think that you almost have to know the crime world a little bit going into this movie, and I think that my understanding has grown a little bit after doing the research on this one, and I think it's going to help with my enjoyment of Heat even more.
Yeah.
So that being said, let's dive into it. We'll start with the plot. Thief's kind of a hard one to talk about, and I kind of wanted to maybe start with the setup of the film rather than try to just do like an overarching plot, because this is actually one critique that Jess and my friend Mike had when we started watching the film, is both of them got a little lost at the beginning about kind of what was happening and the setup and who the main characters were. So our first main character is Frank. He's a jewel thief and an ex-con. The film opens up with him pulling off a heist and leaving the jewels that he's stolen with his fence, Joey Gags, which is an awesome name.
Yeah. Those 80s names, they've come up a few times, and they're just great.
Yeah, and Frank's like, we're not opening up into a crime movie where the person is just getting into their craft and kind of moving up the crime ladder. He's already pretty well established at this point. Like, I would say he's been doing this for like 15 years, I was thinking about today.
I think it was only like 4 years since he got out of prison.
Oh, really?
And in prison, he learned everything from Okla.
Yeah, so he learned everything from his mentor in prison. He's established himself at this point. He's got his own money laundering schemes going on. Like, he's got the used car sales place. He's got his own bar. So he's established. He's in the game at this point.
Yeah.
And he's actually kind of getting to the point where he's almost looking to maybe get out and move on with his life.
One last job.
Yeah, the one last job kind of movie,
Yeah.
exactly. Taking a step back to our friend Joey Gags here, who goes to sell his jewels and is then murdered while in possession of them. So Frank learns who stole the jewels and murdered Joey Gags and goes after them, and then he kind of becomes intertwined at this point with the Chicago mob.
He's very much a lone wolf. He does his own jobs, and he only deals in jewels and cash. He has specific rules. Like, he knows his craft and how he operates and won't deviate from that.
Yes.
So that's where he's super established, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a really interesting look at his mentality as an ex-con and being taught in the prison system by another ex-con.
Yeah.
I'm kind of meshing this a little bit with characters and people you may know. I think that's a pretty good setup. You did say does kind of go off on his one last job. So he cuts a deal with the mob to do this really, really big job, and then he says, I'm out after that. I want to go start a family. He's in a relationship at this point, and he's looking to kind of move on with his life and move forward with his life. And that's something he says in a really pivotal scene in the first act of the movie.
Yeah. That covers everything. We start off with an amazing robbery scene. Everything just goes off perfectly.
Yeah.
And then it's only after when the jewels get stolen and his fence dies
Which is outside of his control as well, right? Like everything that he does extremely well.
Yeah.
And like you said, living to that code has kept him on like the right side of things for however many years he's been doing this.
Yeah. He gets enmeshed with the Chicago Mafia. And yeah, that's a good plot summary overall. Obviously, some crazy shit goes down. This is an amazing movie.
Yeah, it's a good movie. I agree. And I had some mixed feelings at my viewing, my little viewing party. So we'll dive into that a little bit later. So Frank is played by James Caan. He's actually a very important actor, and he's in something that everybody from our generation knows, and you'll know him from that as soon as I say it. But he's also from some really other interesting stuff that I didn't connect him with originally. So James Caan is the father in Elf.
Yeah.
Like, angry corporate dad, which is amazing. It's such a good role for him.
Yeah, it really was. That's hilarious.
He's also Sonny Corleone in The Godfather, which as soon as I read that, I was like, oh my God, how did I not put those two together? Yeah. Because he's like the angry, like over-the-top violent brother in that movie, which is like the greatest crime movie of all time. And I've always like picture, if you say Sonny Corleone, I can picture him in my mind instantly, and I hadn't put those two together before this.
I did, but yeah, it was just like a thing. I was like, oh, it's Sonny.
Yeah. He's also Paul in Misery, which is one of the... I haven't seen Misery, but it's one of Stephen King's most famous movies.
Right.
With Kathy Bates, right?
Yeah. I haven't seen that one. I'm surprised.
Neither have I. I'd like
good
to watch
1990 movie. We should watch it.
Yeah, we should. Ooh, yeah, maybe that would be my pick.
Yeah. I've heard Rollerball, another one that James Caan is in. I've heard of Rollerball, and I don't know much about it. 1975. It looks like it has a great poster.
Nice. Yeah, and I really love the poster for this movie as well.
Yeah. That was some good work. I'm going to Google who made that.
Yeah, that's a good idea, because it's a work of art, like a lot of this film. There's so much good details in this. Anyway, so moving on, we've got Jessie next, and Jessie is Frank's girlfriend in the opening, so it's the cashier. And this is maybe this first point where in our room we were starting to get confused in our viewing, because it kind of looks like in the first couple of scenes that he's just met her and just asked her out on a date. But this isn't actually the case reading into things in the backstory of filming. They've actually been dating for a little while at this point.
So I think you have to go into what dating means in the 80s compared to now. So people would be dating like a lot of people sometimes. So that's what I was assuming, is that they've gone on dates together. Yeah. They've slept together most likely because of who they are.
Right.
But they're not like exclusive. They're not in an exclusive relationship from my perspective.
Okay. Yeah, it's a little bit ambiguous at the beginning.
But from either way, it's like he's about to step it up a notch very quickly.
Yeah. And Jessie's character is actually, in my opinion, one of the most well-written love interest characters in a crime movie. Because in a lot of crime movies, the love interest is just some attractive woman who the person meets, and maybe they have some sort of fiery relationship. She doesn't quite understand the biz, and they eventually crash and burn. Whereas with her, she's coming from the crime industry, the crime world herself. Her ex-boyfriend was a drug dealer who was murdered. She spent some time down in Colombia.
Yeah, like he was murdered down in Colombia while she was just like drifting along with him throughout the crime world of the States and South Central America and everything. Yeah, so she was like almost like a hippie who was just like following along, but she got involved in some heavy stuff.
Yeah.
Like she has a backstory that could have been a movie.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Like, and I think that
setup is great.
It's a fantastic setup. It really, in the brief diner conversation that they have, it explores the characters deeper than a lot of other movies explore their two main characters.
Yeah.
Like it's the depth is incredible. And so Jessie is played by Tuesday Weld. And Tuesday Weld was an extremely influential actress of the 60s and 70s. She also appeared in Once Upon a Time in America as Carol.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, I haven't seen that movie. It's been on my list for a really long time. I've watched a lot of crime
phenomenal.
films.
Yeah.
Yeah, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I've got to watch that one sometime. Maybe for the podcast, but I feel like with how many other crime films we watch, I might just have to watch it myself and we'll do it another time. But it's been on my list for a really long time. Our next character is David Okla Burtonow. Ben, you mentioned him previously. He was Frank's mentor, and he even refers to him as like a father figure while he was in prison as a youth.
Yeah, he was in prison for like 15, 20 years.
Yeah, he was in prison for a long time. And so he taught him everything about his craft and how to be a good thief, and they're extraordinarily close. Throughout the film, Frank's trying to also get Okla out of prison because Okla's realized that he doesn't have long to live. I think he has cancer or something like that. So that's kind of the other focus of the movie is his relationship with his father-like figure. Yeah. And Okla's played by Willie Nelson. Yeah. Which is incredible.
Yeah, that's unreal because I didn't know he was in anything earlier, like that early.
Yeah. Yeah, this is his first big film appearance. He's not in a large part of the film, but because of how much detail went into this film, like his character's so important. He does a fantastic job with the character in the scenes that he is in. They probably could have explored his character a little bit more. They just didn't have time because of how much else was going on.
Yeah, you could have set up a whole movie titled Okla.
Yeah. So this is our 2 spin-off movies right now?
Yeah. Like, this guy's life, like the main character's life, everyone that's in it, it feels so rich and like it's real.
Yeah.
Like there's people that he has long-standing relationships with, or who have like storied histories that like you kind of get hints at, but you like they're pretty deep.
You feel it. You don't have to be told it all the time either. Like, and that's great storytelling. Mm-hmm. There's a couple other characters that, or maybe not characters that you need to know. Like, there's obviously the mob and the mob bosses. But Jim Belushi also makes an appearance here. This is one of his first films. Plays Barry, who's Frank's assistant. They call him James Belushi on this, and so that threw me off at first.
I was like, did he have a brother? But I think he does have a brother, but that's separate. He is Jim Belushi, and I'm pretty sure he was James Belushi in something else I've seen.
Yeah, he was. He used James for a few films. Dennis Farina was also one of the first times he ever acted. He actually was a police officer. He's one of the main mobsters' henchmen, and he was actually a police officer prior to filming.
Yeah, so when I was like following up on everything in this movie, I was like how are things so real? Mm-hmm. And you find out that there are a lot of police officers either consulting. There were consultants that got into the movie basically because they were real. And then same with Arutzi, the one cop who's like a crooked cop. Mm-hmm. They're all crooked, the ones that we see. But anyways, he was actually like a thief in real life. He went to jail. He was in, I think, the mafia or something like that. Were you going to say something about this?
Well, we'll get into that in effects and filming a little bit later, but John Santucci is a really interesting person in real life, and I spent a little bit of time reading up on him. And
so did I.
Yeah. This is a great film to do research on.
Yeah. This is a film, like a film fanatic's favorite movie, like the favorite type of movie.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. For sure. So let's get to the director now, because the focus is on Michael Mann here. And this, like we said before, this is his first feature film. He eventually becomes known for his crime films, so specifically Heat and Manhunter. He also did Public Enemies, which came out in 2009. I love Public Enemies.
I think I did watch that when it came out.
It's Christian Bale and Johnny Depp, and it's great. Like, we have that on
DVD.
Like,
yeah.
My dad and I have watched it probably a dozen times together.
That was phenomenal. Yeah,
it's a great movie. He was also the executive producer on Miami Vice in the 80s, which is like a hugely important TV show at the time.
It was very influential.
Yeah.
That is like the 80s show.
Yeah. The other thing that I noticed, the camera work and the vision of the camera is so incredible. Like, I wrote specifically down the opening scene where the setup of the crime and they're panning down the alleyway and it's raining. I was like, this is perfect.
Yeah. Like it gets you immediately into like the feel of the movie.
Yeah.
Like I got shivers a little bit. I was like, okay, I'm ready.
Yeah.
Like this is it was perfect.
It was a great
and the lighting, like the like bluish hue.
And that's what he's known for, is his night lighting in film.
Yeah.
And what a great showcase.
Yeah, so just like that mixed with the goddamn score.
Yeah.
Like this is one of the movies where like I don't normally notice a score unless it's like super exceptional or like I don't know, it was just so perfect, those 80s synth.
Yes.
The
and
80s synth
discuss
coming
that
in.
Detail.
Yeah. When it was coming in that initial shot, it was just perfect.
Yeah, and he was the one who made the decision and hired the team specifically to create this sound, because this was a specific team that created this sound, and we'll dive into that a little bit later. Let's move into who this movie is for, because we'll talk about Michael Mann, I think, a little bit, and do some compare-contrast once we've watched Heat.
Yeah.
So, obviously, if you're a fan of crime films, or if you're like a diehard like crime podcaster or something like that, I think you're really going to appreciate the level of detail that went into this film.
Yeah.
And I want to bring up a specific example. In the courtroom, they're trying to get Okla out.
Yeah.
And his lawyer is talking to the judge, and the judge puts his fingers on his face.
Yeah.
And then the lawyer does the same thing and puts his fingers on his face, and there's like this weird back and forth.
Yeah.
And the three of us were kind of laughing at it because it looks really odd.
Strange, yeah.
But the detail behind that, the background behind that, is that's how they used to essentially negotiate a price to be paid, to be bought out, essentially. And so they're kind of going back and forth, like the judge wants 8 and then the lawyer says, no, I'll give you 4. And then they settle on 6, so he says 6, and then the lawyer goes 6 as well. So it's little things like that where until you understand a little bit more of the crime world, you kind of miss those little details. Yeah,
I noticed it right away, and I was like, "Oh, they're negotiating right now." Like, like when you first see it, it is like why is the actor doing that? And then you start seeing it goes back and forth. It was good.
Yeah, so it's just like little details like that are just so interesting, and you're really gonna appreciate it as a fan of crime.
Yeah, like seeing how many cops and robbers were in on this movie, like acting or consulting, everything in that area. Like that's how you build a solid world.
Yeah, it's all the background research that went into this. Absolutely, like. Michael Mann's movie prior to this was about a convict competing in the Olympics.
Yeah.
So he kind of talks in some of his interviews about how he was almost doing research into the mind of a convict at that point for this movie, and that's really cool. How prepared he was, and like how different movies over time have prepared him for like his future film.
Yeah.
If you appreciate movies, I think you're really going to enjoy this because, like, the camera work's really great. The characters are really fleshed out. There's a lot of interesting stuff going on. Like, the character Frank himself is written extraordinarily well as an ex-con. Like, we understand how the mind of Frank works in this film.
And they really explore that. It's not just, like, the classic, like, I'll never go back to jail. Like trope. It's he picked up a mentality that is very true and specific, that like from his time in prison. He's not just like I'll never go back like we always hear. Like that's not the setup. It's that he feels like he feels a certain way about, like I'll get into that a little bit because we're just trying to
go ahead.
I was saying later.
Oh, fair enough. Okay. when we get into spoiler talk. So
Yeah. So we're just trying to set up, like, say who would like this. Anyone who's into crime specifically, and like the film everything.
Yeah.
The score. If you really like a good score, listen to this.
This movie is the most 80s movie I've ever seen. And I think the reason for that is something we're going to have to discuss in Legacy. I got to leave it for then, I think.
All right. Yeah, it
So
felt
if
so
you're a fan-
80s.
Yeah, if you're a fan of 80s films, this is going to feel right at home.
Yeah.
The other thing I'll say about Frank is in my opinion, I found Frank a much more enjoyable character to watch than somebody like Tony Montana in Scarface.
Yeah.
I didn't get into Scarface really well because I just was so off-put by Tony Montana and everything that he is, whereas like Frank I can empathize with.
Yeah.
And even though Frank has these certain mentalities, like even though Frank can be an ass, like he can say some pretty horrible things, you can understand who he is to have gotten to the point where like some of those things can come out.
Yeah. I fucking love Scarface.
Ah.
And because you're not like, you're rooting for him, but you're also just watching, like, it's a different
He's an
it's a different
anti-hero.
Well, both are.
Yeah, but I don't know.
It's just Scarface is more anti, I guess.
Oh yeah. I just couldn't. I don't know. I'm a big crime film buff, I would say, but Scarface is just one that didn't connect with me. Whereas as Frank the character, I really connected with a lot more. I will say this is kind of my one knock, and this is maybe where some people are going to be slightly off put. There's two things that I would say. The dialogue isn't always perfect in this.
There are
film.
some great quotes
There are
and
some
great
fantastic
scenes
quotes
and
some
a
fantastic
good monologue.
scenes. Yes.
But yeah, like, there's
some parts where like it just feels, I don't know, it just feels hokey.
80s-y?
Or yeah, maybe 80s-y. There's a point in time when a character says, "Oh, look at that baby," and it's just like a really weird line.
Yeah.
There's just moments like that don't always connect. So if you're somebody who notices that, you might get a little.
I think it was the parts that weren't crime related, like that part, because it was a little off, but.
Yeah, like it's small stuff. But I want to put that out there for
Yeah.
people who are maybe specifically looking at that. I think you could potentially be a little bit confused with the opening stuff, and that's why I wanted to really hammer home the setup and the characters and how their relationships are developed. Because going in for the first time and not knowing about all of that, there was definitely some confusion in our watch.
One thing that I'll continuously say is that if you're watching something and you don't know what's going on, it will be answered right after you ask the question.
Probably, yes. I mean, you have a girlfriend who does ask a lot of questions while watching movies, so you're probably a little bit more used to that. But, like,
it'll be like, what's that guy's name? And then the guy will walk onto the scene and his buddy will be like, Frank!
Yeah. Joe Gags!
Yeah. Anyways. Yeah, it's just a classic crime film. It's less of a cult classic than I think it deserves. I think it deserves more attention.
I agree. And it came out to a lot of critical acclaim at the time. And it's hugely important for the crime genre. Like, obviously this isn't a Godfather, but I will say that a lot of things that went into this definitely influenced later film in the genre. And just 80s film in general. And that's what I'm excited to talk about in the legacy.
Yeah. All right. And then when to watch? Is that
yes.
what? Yeah.
When to watch? You have something?
You kind of have to be ready to watch this, I think.
Yeah.
Like, you can't just throw it on. So it isn't a Friday night movie. I think it's a Saturday night movie.
I think, I could agree with that. Or even like a Sunday rain on the couch kind of afternoon. Like, I think a rainy kind of day is where this film fits in, especially with that opening panning shot of the alleyway. I thought you could maybe slot it into like a late Friday night film, but
if you're not too tired.
Yeah, it might be maybe a little too dense for something like that.
Yeah, and like it is a little slow in certain parts, and that can, but like that could be good. I don't know.
Yeah, but I completely agree with you that you absolutely need to be in the right mood going into this. You need to know what you're getting into.
Yeah, like you'll know if you get into it right away from that opening scene.
Yeah, this is one of those movies where it's not on Netflix, but if you were flipping through Netflix, for example, and you stopped in and you were like, I had this on my list for a while. I don't know what else to watch. I'm going to watch this. That's probably not the right time to watch it. The right time to watch it is like you flip it through and you're like, oh, like, let's watch this. I haven't seen this yet.
Yeah.
I'm kind of looking forward to it. Or you specifically go and look it out. And speaking of where to watch it, you can watch it on Tubi and Hoopla. So Hoopla, the library's streaming service, and then Tubi was the one that you had talked about before, I think, with the ads.
Yeah, it didn't work for me this time. Like so I went to Just Watch, and I did see that it was on Tubi one time, and then it wasn't the next time when I actually went to watch it. Yeah. So I'm not sure where it went, if it's still on there.
I had kind of a similar experience because the first time I went to find it, I didn't see it through Just Watch on there, and then the second time I did see it on there. So I'm not really sure. It might be because this film is not a cult classic at this point that it's a little bit harder to find. It maybe doesn't, the connection on Just Watch isn't working perfectly or whatever. But are you checking to see if it's on right now?
Yeah, now it's there.
Yeah, it was
only
strange.
Yeah, it was only available for Apple at one point. No, it must have just mixed up what was going on. Anyways, this is a little too long for our podcast.
Yeah. We'll move on. Okay. So I think that's the spot where we want to cut it off. We've done a good dive into the opening scenes and the setup and who this movie is for. I think I'm ready to get into some of the details behind the scenes and talk spoilers.
Yeah, let's get into it.
All right. I really hope that if this movie sounds interesting to you that you go and watch it, because it is a treat.
Well, I almost want to compare it to like how well the Joker pulls off the robbery in Dark Knight.
Right.
Like that's the movie. Like that's the whole movie, kind of. Like it's like that over and over. Oh, well,
yeah,
twice.
Like, and maybe I don't know. Let's talk themes because this is gonna kind of relate to this. I kind of think that this is more about like family and the relationships of like people in the crime world than it is about the different heists, because there's really only two heists that we see in the film, and they are absolutely central to the plot. Like that's what's driving the plot forward, but it's the interactions between Jessie and Frank and Okla, and then Frank and Jessie, and then we get the mob and Frank. And then there's the whole the cops and Frank, and how the cops interact with the mob, and how there's all these different connections throughout, and how the mob even treats each other as family, but you have to live by their code, and that doesn't necessarily align with the code that Frank has.
Yeah, he's a lone wolf.
The other theme is a look into the mind of an ex-con, because Frank doesn't interact well with bureaucracy at all. Like every time he interacts with the police or he interacts with the
public, even like regular public, public servants, I guess.
Yeah, that's kind of what I mean. Like when he goes to the adoption place.
Yeah.
Every situation where he gets in and there's any bit of conflict, instead of trying to find the resolution, he like charges forward and gets extraordinarily aggressive very quickly.
Yeah. And that's that prison mindset.
Yeah. We see as well, like, he's not incredibly well educated either, because he's spent most of his youth in the prison system. Like, he's pretty racist at points.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's more just yelling out stuff to, like, offend people than it's, like, maybe his actual beliefs. And that's probably a little bit the feeling of being in prison as well. Like,
yeah, you have to kind of pick a side in prison.
Exactly. And so he's kind of got that mentality. The very simplified look at what he wants his life to look like on his collage.
Yeah. which was I wish I like got a closer up picture of that. I might pull that up, but like it had some like really dark shit, and like it was just a look at what is important to a prisoner and what is also like their fears are also in there.
Yeah, it was really interesting because it's something that he had to make with the limited resources that he had in prison. Again, he's thinking about his life in prison where he has nothing and he is nothing. And he brings that up. And so these are like very basic wants for his life. Like he wants to have a family, he wants to have kids. He just wants to like
He wants to have a El Dorado.
Yeah, and he values his relationship with Okla.
Yeah.
Yeah, they could have probably done a little bit of a better job showing that because it kind of gets passed around a couple of times, that little portrait, but I would have liked to have seen it in a little bit more detail as well during the film.
Yeah.
I guess my last theme that I wanted to discuss was the look at the relationship between the mob and the police. And this is kind of Michael Mann's first look at this, but it's something that throughout his films he explores a lot, is I guess not only the relationship, but how mobsters and police are often just different sides of the law, and there's not much else different between the two. They both live with a set of codes.
Yeah.
They both understand that the other is almost like co-working alongside them, like parallel to them.
Yeah.
And that you could have a good relationship as long as you both understand where you are in the relationship. Like that's something that we see the cops try to shake Frank down, and because Frank is the lone wolf, the set of codes, he wants nothing to do with them. He doesn't care about their them trying to shake him down. He doesn't care about that. He basically says, "Throw me in prison. I'm not dealing with you."
Yeah.
Whereas the mob is like, we pay our friends at the police station so that they don't bug us with all the stuff we have going on, and don't mess with that relationship because it's working extraordinarily well for us.
Yeah. That's what organized crime does. Yeah, there's always corrupt cops when there's heavy like mob influence. Yeah.
Yeah, and
they did that. They played it off well.
Yeah, and we see that the police are just as violent as the mob when they bring Frank in and
they're very violent. Yeah, they probably won't take it as far.
They would
maybe, but
maybe, but not in this case. But you never know. Like there's always stories of police brutality.
Yeah,
so.
And it's more like they're a thorn in his side, whereas the mafia is a lot more dangerous than just a thorn in his side.
Right. Yeah, and we see that he really struggles to get out when he wants to, even though he's told them like explicitly like this is my last job.
Yeah.
And that's something that I think this movie does really well as well, is a lot of crime films, we see the main crime characters. They love the life they've gotten in. They don't want to get out. They
like it pulls them back in with.
They want more. They always want more.
And he's super strict about it. He's like, no, I don't want more.
Yeah, I'm ready to get out. I know where my life is heading, and I spent he says this in the diner scene, which is it's the best scene in this film by a mile, and it's honestly like a top 20 movie scene. I'm going to get into that a little bit later, but he says, "I've wasted so much time. I've lost so much time, and I'm trying to basically shortcut my way to getting where I want to be because there's no way with all of the time that I've lost that I'll be able to get where I need to go without doing this. But I can see the end of the tunnel. I'm almost there, and if you stick with me, we can have a great life. I'm just so close." And he gets there, and then the mob is like, "You are us. You are our family, and you are part of us now.
We own you too." Yeah.
We own you.
Yeah. I love when they're driving to the diner, and Frank just lays it out completely to Jessie that because that's where I think they are a new relationship. They have dated before, but they aren't in a full relationship, and he's fully laying it out now because he's like, I'm ready.
Yeah,
And
that's a really great scene as well, because in a lot of other crime films, like the spouse or the love interest doesn't really fully understand what's happening.
Yeah.
Whereas in this, like Frank's like explicit about it.
Yeah. He's like, what do you think I do? And then she's like, you sell little fucking cars. That's what you do. He's like, I wear $150 slacks. I wear silk shirts. I wear $800 suits. I wear a gold watch. I wear a perfect D flawless 3-carat ring. I change cars like other guys change their fucking shoes. I'm a thief. I've been in prison, all right?
Yeah.
Like that whole delivery, the line, like his like, it felt so real coming from him. It was just a great like intro into his character too, and it helped like move their relationship forward.
Yeah, absolutely. and it's that candidacy between the two of them that really works.
And that's when they were driving to the diner, and then they had like a more relaxed conversation at the diner, kind of, and like it set that whole scene. It was phenomenal.
That scene's great. If you, for whatever reason, you don't want to watch the movie, I would say look up that scene and decide for yourself whether you want, because that's a highlight scene for me. So let's get into effects and filming. We've already talked about how great the cinematography is, like the camera work. You did mention previously that there is a connection to both sides of the law in the film. So John Santucci, the corrupt cop, was a former jewel thief, and he was on set consulting on the methods that he specifically used. So the main heist, where they used the massive like torch thing at the end of the movie, was actually based on one of his own heists that he had done.
That's
previously.
unreal.
Yeah. And so I did some research on that as well, and they actually had a really hard time filming that, because that specific torch that used gets, I don't even remember how insanely hot.
Yeah. It's like thermite or something. It it burns like almost as hot as the sun, I guess.
Yeah, like a fraction of the sun.
Yeah. But like on Earth, that's a lot.
Yeah, exactly.
And in a room, in a bank,
yeah,
like to do that, if he pulled that off in real life, I wonder if he used one that big, because that was massive.
It was huge, and I think you had to, because you have to be far enough away from it, right? And it was really interesting seeing them set up the whole like room, and I didn't fully appreciate it until actually after I had done the research and understood like just how hot that thing was.
When I was watching it, I was like how are they like not choking themselves out right now?
Yeah.
But so I love that they set up that Frank had a like metallurgist or whatever that guy was. Like he went somewhere where they melt shit down and turn it into whatever. I don't know what they were doing there.
Yep.
But that little relationship showed like he really knew what he was doing.
Yes.
He was using like experts.
That was a really cool connection. Yeah. I agree. And it's cool to see like the background, because like often these thieves would have these pieces of equipment, and there's no way that they would have been able to create them themselves.
Yeah, and then I also loved like one small detail again was at the very beginning when they were putting away their they successfully completed their heist. They were putting their stuff back into the car, and like the tools were heavily used. They were like real tools, where like now you always see like a guy in a suit putting away, like he pulls out like pristine brand new items, but like these are like real tools, and like either they've done a lot of these heists or they're getting the tools elsewhere. I don't know, but I like that.
The tools, so that opening tool that he used, like that was custom created by the metal working guy. And so a lot of these tools were used like for specific jobs. Like they had done their research going in. They knew what kind of safe that they were dealing with, and like how specifically they were going to crack into it. Yeah,
like the metallurgist guy, he actually rebuilt one wall of the safe to test this thermite rod to see if it would actually work. And they're like, we can do it.
Exactly. Yeah. There was also a lot of police officers involved in the filming. So we did have like the law representation as well.
Yeah.
And both sides of it kind of balancing each other out, which is really interesting as well. And funny enough, Dennis Farina, the guy who plays one of the mobster's henchmen, who I said previously was a police officer, he was one of the people who had arrested John Santucci previously.
Oh, wow.
So those two were actually were connected before the film.
Yeah.
And so I think it was James Caan who said it was really interesting watching the police and the thieves interact with each other while on set.
Yeah, and they both played opposite roles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they both appreciated the other's like input and outlook on life. They both really like enjoyed working with each other.
Yeah.
A lot of the thieves that were on set were bragging about how they committed crimes and were never caught because most of them were past the statute of limitations, so they didn't care.
Yeah.
This would have been a really interesting movie to be on set for.
Oh my god, yeah. You're seeing like some of the best on each side.
Yeah.
Like it's like that classic relationship of like a serial killer and the detective who caught him, and how the serial killer actually finally respects someone.
Yeah, like
in
the Batman
law enforcement.
and the Joker kind of style.
Yeah. That's a good theme there. Yeah.
Yeah, and Chicago, like just before this time, was really infamous for its crime.
Oh yeah.
And it's still like got a lot of crime going on, but like the whole like the mob connections and everything there go very deep. So it's cool to see a lot of that knowledge of that world coming into this film.
Yeah.
Jeff Bridges was Michael Mann's first pick to play Frank, but was too young at the time. Which is kind of wild.
Yeah.
But, like James Caan absolutely nailed this role.
Oh
like,
yeah, 100%.
He said that this is one of his favorite roles of all time, and the diner scene itself, he said, was his favorite scene that he's ever done in film. Al Pacino also turned down the role of Frank, which Al Pacino could have done this as well, just as easily. And we're gonna see that in Heat because he's a cop in Heat, but he's got the same anger and aggression and passion that Frank does.
Yeah. I've like just from watching the trailer, you could see like it's the same mentality.
Yes.
So you could see this mentality on either side of the law coin. Yeah,
exactly. The Green Mill is a real jazz club in Chicago where Frank had his bar set up.
Oh yeah.
It was frequented by Al Capone.
Wow.
Yeah, so he really liked the Green Mill because there was one specific booth that was his that had a perfect vantage point of the front and the rear doors, so he could see anybody coming at all times.
Smart.
Yeah. Really cool. This movie goes so deep into the Chicago crime syndicates.
The way Michael Mann was going about this film, he got a lot of help from the people who lived those lives because they respected the way he's going about it.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a really great point. And it's something that good writers do a lot as well, is put the research into understanding what they're actually writing about. And I think that gets missed sometimes in big budget Hollywood films
that are like covering massive events or like
is understanding like really just the minds even of the people that are involved. Like James Caan knew, and I knew what James Caan knew inside and out, like the character of Frank. And so that plays an important part in setting up the film and just making it rich with like lore and detail
and that's where like you see these high profile actors who meld into a role. They have to have something to meld into.
Yes.
And that's where all that like phenomenal writing comes in, and it did come in here.
And I think that on the last episode, that was maybe something we had kind of discussed a little bit about Gary Oldman's character. Maybe Gary Oldman, because the character wasn't deep enough, he kind of struggled with the role a little bit, and he wasn't happy with it.
Which is surprising for him,
Yeah, exactly. He's a guy who loses himself in a character, and this wasn't a character that he understood well enough to lose himself in, because it was so one-dimensional.
Yeah. All the cars in this were just like phenomenal.
Cool, like 80s cars.
Yeah, and like there was like there was a mix of like some like 60s muscle cars all the way up to the 80s, like the newest 80s cars. Like there was like even like shitty cars of that time, like a Buick LeSabre and stuff like that. But the Eldorado that he had and the BMW that he had, they were just phenomenal. It was just like they had the right cars for his personality.
Yeah, the cool like baller like gangster cars. Like They weren't muscle cars, but they were like the chic black, like, yeah. I know exactly what you mean. Let's talk about score, because you had kind of mentioned this previously. The score is very electronic 80s. Like, if you think 80s movies, like, this score is like fits perfectly into that time.
Yeah, it's the synth.
Yes.
So, like, I don't know if you've actually looked into what, like, synths are, but, like, they often had, you know, they had, like, a guitar plug, and they would plug it in and then plug it in somewhere else on this massive, like, circuit board.
Okay.
And then it would create these, like, undulating, like, wah, 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 wah. And then they would manipulate that to create these super crazy, like, future-y sounds.
Interesting.
So that's what, like, that's, like, the sound of the 80s.
Yes, it is.
And, like, it fits in so well with the lighting and the rainy nights, like, in the city. It just created that whole vibe. And that's one of, like, my favorite sounds in the world, just because of, like, memories of watching old 80s movies as a kid.
Maybe that's part of the reason why you and I enjoy, like, Blade Runner 2049 as well, because it kind of does that too.
Oh, 100%. And, like, 2049, they really, like, they took that concept and remade it in such a, like, modern way.
Yes.
But they respected its origins.
Yeah. They hired a band called Tangerine Dream, which is a German electronic band that was founded actually in 1967, which kind of blew my mind that they were already at that point, like, almost 15 years old, had been around for that long.
Yeah.
Because their sound is very 80s, but they had been around previously.
Yeah. So I think it took that long for it to become mainstream. Like, there were different areas of music where, especially in, like, Europe, where their music didn't come to, like, their underground music didn't have a chance in America for a while. That's the way I see, like, the synth growing, is from Europe to America, and then America in the 80s into film.
And funny enough, actually, so this was the second film that Tangerine Dream scored, and they went on to do a number of other films, especially in the 80s. But funny enough, when this came out, it was nominated for a Razzie Award for Worst Score.
Wow.
But, and this is where I'm going to segue into Legacy, I think that this film is the film that influenced 80s scores.
Shit.
Yes,
because
it came
amazing.
out in 1981.
Yeah, of course.
And this was like one of the first uses of this electronic
synth
music.
sound.
Synth sound in 80s movies. I think.
Oh wow.
I think that this is hugely important for this time.
Yeah, this is the perfect setup to the rest of the 80s movies that everyone knows and loves.
Yes.
This is what set it up. He created that whole vibe with the filming and add in the score. Yeah.
Yeah, and
that's why I love it so much.
Yep, that's it. Because this film, it's not a big hit anymore. Like, it's not a cult movie, I would say.
Yeah.
But at the time, it was a big critical hit. So if you think critical hit, you've got to assume that a lot of big Hollywood names have probably gone and seen this because they've heard about it.
Yeah.
And so this would have influenced a lot of their work throughout that time.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Man, that opening, like, the first notes I have on this were great opening shot, and then I was like, and music, and I put in quotes, down now. Like I tried to write that sound.
Right.
Man.
But I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah. Down now.
And the other part of the legacy of this is the groundwork of Michael Mann's career.
Mm-hmm.
And we're gonna watch Heat. That's the top of his game, basically. But everything else that he does is rooted in this film, essentially. And probably a lot of the research he had done, because there's probably a lot of those background conversations that he had with the police on set or the thieves on set that
opened up stories and worlds to explore within that underground.
I believe the conversation that Frank has about being beaten in prison was actually based on a real story that one of those guys
most
had.
likely. Yeah.
That's most of my legacy bits, but I think this film is so important to the understanding the 80s and in film.
Yeah. Just everything. I feel like they nailed, like, the weapon choices, the the clothing, everything there. Sorry, I'm going back to the effects and filming, but
no
like
worries.
it's the setup for everything. And I'm kind of like, my mind is a little blown right now just thinking about like it was 1981 and that sound was new and how it meshes with everything. Yeah.
It kind of blew my mind too when I got to that point where I was like, you know what? This is the movie that started that.
Yeah, and like I feel like even like Frank's leather jacket, like
his suit, his suit is so cool, and like when he goes to see the guy at that factory, to get his jewels back, like I was like, damn, that's a good suit. Like I think I like that suit better than I like Cary Grant's suit. It's just like, you know, like the big like
collar.
The big collar, like open. Like, oh yeah, that's a cool suit. I could rock that. I could rock that for sure.
This was like before the time of someone who's badass has to be like super ripped. Mm-hmm. He was like a pretty skinny guy, but you do see like he's fit, I guess. I don't know why I'm going into this, but like I'm just like looking at a few photos.
This is pre-2000s where you didn't have to be on steroids to be like a good action star or a good main character, right?
Yeah.
This is where just being like, you know, a regular guy.
Yeah,
is okay.
like he had like, now we look at his hair, he had like kind of like a mini fro.
Yeah, he was kind of balding a little bit.
Balding with like too big of hair for what the amount he had left.
I loved his hair, dude. It was just like something else, right?
Yeah, it was just so like, it's like the end of the 70s and then like the beginning of the 80s.
Exactly
it's that crossover of the beginning of the decade.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That reminds me of like Mad Men. In Mad Men in the final season, they're transitioning into the 70s. So all of the actors, like over time they transition, but the last season you really see a stark difference between how everybody looks, and they all look awful compared to the 60s.
Yeah.
Except for Don Draper looking the same as he did in the 50s, basically. Yeah. But anyway, the film itself, moving into sequels, prequels, and reboots, was actually based on a novel called The Home Invaders, with Confessions of a Cat Burglar. So this is written by Frank Homer, who himself was a thief and wrote this while in prison. It's very loosely based on the book.
He basically read the book, wanted to make a movie out of it, but then kind of pivoted to a whole other story with some of the elements and like probably the feelings of the thief in the book and like
his mentality
it
probably helped influence the character of Frank more than anything.
Know what, we haven't talked about the mob guy yet.
We should
father
talk about him a little bit as well.
He was and he wasn't a classic mob guy.
Yeah, so Leo, Robert Prosky is the actor. Yeah, he's kind of a little bit older and grandfatherly at first, feeling.
Yeah.
And then he becomes a little bit more evil as things go on, but he's not like your
Don Corleone.
Yeah, he's not your Don Corleone. He's not like any of the like head mob bosses in Goodfellas or anything like that. He's got a bit of a different vibe.
I think that's kind of hinting that he's like a more like a modern gangster for that time period.
Maybe.
Like he
like we see him when they're doing the work trying to figure out how they were going to do the crime or the theft. We see him in like golf clothes, like he's about to go golfing in Chicago. Whereas like you don't really see those guys in like Goodfellas or The Godfather wearing that kind of outfit. Yeah.
It was like he had a bunch of legitimate businesses, because that's kind of the difference where like The Godfather, they were that was before they had a lot of legitimate business. Right. They had to transition, and I think that's where like he is kind of a modern Godfather. He played it well, because leading up to the heist, he really draws Frank in, while Frank's still trying to be like, no, I don't want want anything from you. But then he's like, I could get you a son, because they can't have kids.
Yeah.
And like, that's an essential thing. Like, I was like, don't do it, Frank. Don't do it.
Once you do that, there's no getting out.
Yeah.
He's got you.
Yeah,
He's
like
got you.
you're taking a favor from this guy.
Yeah.
Like maybe that's
and
where
favors mean something to these guys.
Yeah, and that he should have known that from prison.
Yeah,
you don't do anything in prison for someone else.
Yes, that's a great point.
Yeah.
He lost sight of who he was. There.
Yeah, exactly. Like he was getting bedazzled or dazzled, not bedazzled.
Because he had this look of what he wanted in his life, and because this one particular piece
seemed so impossible.
This was the out, and
and
that's where Leo knew
that's where Leo was looking. Like he was looking for that thing.
Yes.
Because Frank is so good.
Yeah.
Like he's top notch. He's like not world classness. Like he could be probably.
Yeah. Man, family for like crime or even family for like work is like it's almost like trying to get people into a cult like mindset.
Mentality.
Yeah. That's really interesting. I've never really thought of it like that, because that's essentially like that's what the mob is. Like they're a family. You do everything as a family. Like
do everything for the family.
You do everything for the family. Yeah, it's like a cult. Like and it's the same thing. Like if your work's telling you that you're a family, better be looking out.
Don't continue with interviews if they're like, oh, we're like a family.
Yeah.
You're
gonna be doing a lot of favors.
You're
gonna have to give up your firstborn.
You're gonna get kneecapped.
Drinking the Kool-Aid.
The way Leo as a character was great. I didn't love his death scene.
No?
I loved... Okay,
this was the second time in film where we've had somebody get shot and be dead and then, like, moan afterwards.
Yeah. And, like, he's shot in the head in that part. Yeah, and then he's like... Where... does that happen? Maybe it only happened in the 80s because they had so much lead poisoning or something like that. The bodies back then. I don't know.
Maybe.
Yeah, so his actual death scene sucked, but everything that led up to that, I don't know if this is the first time, but it was used so effectively, silence in the movie.
Yes.
There's no score. It was just...
Yes, it was dead quiet. That was quiet. Fantastic. I noticed that
James
too.
Caan...
And as soon as he shoots him, the music starts up
again. Yeah. And James Caan was actually using the gun like appropriately. Like he actually learned for this.
Yes, he did.
For this role,
and that carried through his other films as well.
Yeah,
it's notable.
That that actually sets him up well, because he doesn't just blast a ton of bullets. He actually runs out, and he's going around corners effectively. Everything,
So I actually read about that in my research, that he essentially went to a gun training facility to get trained on how to use a gun properly. And when they went there, he was explaining the movie and everything, and they were like, you've been in prison for like 20 years in this film. You're coming out. Honestly, you're probably not going to know how to use a gun all that well. So they taught him for 3 days, and they were like, 3 days gun course. This is how much you probably know, realistically. Yeah. But, you could obviously tell that, he knew what he was doing with a weapon.
Yeah, because he was so, he knew his job. It was part of his personality to, he had to be pretty damn good with it. Mm-hmm. He's so smart with everything else he does. It makes sense that he picked this up quickly in his, time out of prison.
Yeah.
So, there's all these different scenes that are done so well, and they're connected pretty damn good throughout this whole movie. You don't lose steam that much, because as long as you're okay with getting into character development, which is essential for a film junkie like us.
Yeah.
Or that's just what we do. Yeah.
So this is the other thought. I just remembered this. This was something else I was thinking about, because often family does come up in crime films, especially centered around the mob. And I was thinking about this a lot, and I think it's also maybe a little bit of a tool to use in film to maybe make the characters a little bit more relatable, because the average person isn't involved in the mafia, isn't dealing drugs or guns or just in general involved there. So to give them that family connection maybe gives you that little bit of empathy towards a character.
I wasn't paying attention. It sounded like you said some really good shit there. Sorry.
Damn it.
Empathy for the character. Yeah. That's always good.
Perfect. That's fine. I've done that to you before. Too,
yeah,
so.
yeah. I think we do it, and this is just the first time we've admitted it.
Yeah, 100%. Oh, I've definitely done it to you.
And know what my tangent in my head was that maybe not listened to you right there? I was like, I wonder when it was the first time a cop broke someone's tail light as they pulled him over, because that was one of my notes that I just wanted to bring up. Is that like, was this? It's when he gets pinched for the first time.
Yeah.
And the cops are like, "You're pinched, jag off."
Yeah. I love that too. They're like, "Well, what do you get me for?" He's like, "Broken tail light." Boom.
Yeah. I was just Googling if like when is the first time that happened, because that is like
that was something I was interested in, if this was one of the first films with like really crooked cops.
Yeah, like it's definitely an early film where they were portraying the reality of cops in the 80s.
Yeah.
And another thing that I loved, another small detail of just like the 80s, because we didn't have cell phones in bars. Like Frank walks up to the bar, he's like, "Give me a phone, will you?" And then they just like hand him like a landline.
Yeah.
And then I don't know, it's just like he does that a few times, and he's so aggressive about it too.
That's his place of business too, and that's something that doesn't connect at first.
He did it somewhere else too. I thought Oakla faked his death for a minute.
Why?
Because
he's already out of prison.
Yeah, I thought that's how they were getting him out of prison, in case like someone was listening to their conversations. He's like, "Oh, I'm sick," but like, know what I mean? And I thought that was their whole plan.
You're playing
especially
5D chess.
No, especially with the negotiating with the judge. I thought this was all like an elaborate plan from Frank, and like he was like, getting Oakla out. He was getting out early no matter what, but I thought they were breaking him out, and I was like, is Oakla gonna be in like the heist, because right before the heist?
That was some like pure Hollywood thinking. Like,
yeah.
Whereas this movie's too rooted in like
reality. Like the guy's gonna die.
Yeah.
The scene when he's broken into the safe in the heist. And, like, he's done that whole tiring job of holding up that thermite rod. They break in, and Jim Belushi goes in, and he's starting to fill bags. He's just filling bags with diamonds. So many diamonds.
Yeah.
It was just a crazy amount of diamonds. And Frank just sits back in a chair.
Yeah.
All smoky and dirty. Lights a cigarette. And, like, you could see, like, just, like... he's made it. He's at the top of the world.
Yes, absolutely. That was a great scene. Like, yeah.
Oh man, that's probably one of the best scenes of a bank vault breaking into of all time. That should be in one of the
satisfactory.
Yeah. Like, just so genius, and just the way he acted there. Yeah. I keep looking at my notes and wanted to talk about stuff.
Well, let's get into our personal reviews and the partner factor, and we'll close out with some discussion on some of our favorite scenes. So, I really enjoyed this movie. Mike and Jess both lost interest a little too quickly, I would say, because they had a hard time following those initial plot lines. And in all fairness, that's why I wanted to discuss that stuff, is because there's a little bit of confusion there. So I definitely enjoyed it the most of the three of us. I absolutely loved the camera work and Caan's portrayal. Like, those are my two favorite parts of the movie. So, actually, and this kind of goes into effects in filming a little bit that I forgot to talk about earlier, is the relationship between Frank and Jessie. They actually kind of flip-flopped a few times on whether their relationship was going to be brand new or if they were already established. So that's why things play out a little awkward, is because that first scene where he sees her at the bar and asks her to go out, I think they were initially thinking that was going to be their first time going out. Yeah. And then in post-production, they kind of edited it and made it so that, I don't know if there was some scenes that got left on the cutting room floor.
Yeah, because they probably, like, went out to get coffee or whatever that first time, and then later they were supposed to go to the concert or something, and he didn't show up. So I saw that there was some continuity errors there.
Yeah, it was a little awkward for sure. It's pretty obvious that it's a little bit awkwardly cut. So I also, in my opinion, it's not the best crime film I've ever seen, but it's pretty good. It's probably the most realistic crime film that I've ever seen.
It was very well done, and how realistic, compared to like Fast and Furious and stuff,
Yeah.
it's very realistic.
Yeah.
But like
this is basically a biography.
Comparing
those.
But when you are looking at this film, it's very rooted in reality,
Yes.
and the fact that it's set up so much in the 80s, that's where I think this deserves the most respect.
Yeah, and it's a really dense, well-written film and well-executed. I think that this movie is a little bit unique as well, in that it's one of the very few cases where the criminal really feels like they're trying to better themselves and get out at the right time.
Yeah.
Like, you really don't see that very often. It's usually like they almost are like going down with the ship kind of thing. Like, they don't. But on the flip side, we get to see like Frank burn down his entire life. Like he gets like, back to his ex-con mentality
because he has to complete this in some way.
Yeah.
So yeah, I didn't love that he burnt everything down. It was great. There was great scenes there, and like it makes sense. But like at the same time, why not at least try to kill the boss first?
So I kind of thought about that too. I think that, it was exactly what Frank, the character, would do in that situation, is he realized that he had made a mistake, that he didn't stay true to himself.
Yeah.
And so he decided to just burn it all down and start new. But I think that B, despite the head of the mob boss and probably the top 2 or 3 guys all getting murdered all at the same time, there's probably enough pieces of the mob there. And if I'm like 4th in line in the family, and suddenly all of the guys who are paying me are gone, I'm probably going after the dude who did that and ruined like my whole family basically. So
you would just join him.
No, I think those guys would burn his place down, because there's the connection with the family. So I think no matter what, everything of his was going to be destroyed, and he did it himself. Like, he didn't let the mob have that satisfaction.
Yeah. Because the mob is bigger than just the guys that we're introduced to. I see what you're talking about.
And he's never, at this point, he's got to walk away from Chicago completely. The police are in his pockets now, too. Yeah. Like, I really understood where he was coming from when he made the decisions. When he turned Jessie out, like, it was harsh. Like, it was, like, hardcore harsh, but the reason why he did that is because she wouldn't have left anyway, because she comes from this life already, and she's like, we'll get through anything.
She's together. Ride or die.
She's ride or die. She's a pure ride or die chick.
Yeah.
So he had to push her away. The only way that he could have done it is by just saying, we're done, I'm cutting you out.
Yeah.
Like,
it's like that scene in Old Yeller where he's like, just go.
Yeah.
To the dog.
Yeah.
Is that Old Yeller? I think so.
I don't
Maybe
know.
Lassie? I don't know. Anyways.
I think it's Old Yeller. I don't think it's Lassie.
No, I don't think. I haven't done my...
No, go ahead.
I don't remember if Annabelle watched this with me because I was paying so much attention to the movie.
That's hilarious.
And like I was busy, crazy week, but it was, man, I loved the movie.
Yeah.
And I was super into it because of that building. Like, they built so much. I love getting lost in the universe or like scenario that they've built, and this got me to that point. Any small issues I could completely look past because they built that world well.
Yeah, and that's fair. And a lot of the issues that I had were like relatively minor. It's just I thought, looking at it critically, I thought I needed to point them out.
Yeah, same. Yeah.
So did you think this movie sits on like any top list for you? Do you think?
The top list that I would put this on, which I would love to actually like write an article about, is movies that influenced a decade.
Yeah.
Like movies that influence that like most people don't know about or something like that.
This is absolutely one of those. Like, top 5 probably.
Yeah. This and either a decade or a genre. It's like the same with our very first podcast episode.
The Thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thief and Thing. Yeah. I don't know. Those are the top 2 on that list right now. We'll see what else we can add on there as we keep going, because we're finding these movies that are the beginnings of things.
Yeah. Oh, The Thing's like one of my favorite movies of all time.
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
It's probably one of my favorite horrors, like bar none. So.
I would say these are close to the same level for their genres. Thief isn't as high as the thing with Thief and Crime
is that crime movies are all just happen to be so fantastic, and like there's so many great directors and great actors involved in those genres that like you're literally sitting in a podium where like The Godfather's like the #1 rated movie of all time.
Yeah.
And then you've got Goodfellas, which is like #5.
Yeah.
Like you're competing against like all-stars, like Olympic level movie athletes.
Yeah, and even like modern crime movies are phenomenal most of the time. Like so crime pays.
I guess so.
Yeah.
If we learned anything on this podcast.
Yeah.
I would say for me, the diner scene is like
a top scene
for like probably it goes in my top. It's definitely top 50. I don't know if it breaks top 20, but it's a really great scene. I was thinking like there's something magical about a really great diner scene, like in Pulp Fiction or When Harry Met Sally. Like, I don't know. Have you had like any personal diner moments, like discussions like that? I feel like we don't have enough of these diner discussions.
You know what? Like I have like phenomenal memories at places that are similar to diners, like coffee shops and things like that. Yeah. So like in my personal life, yes. But nothing as like crazy as this.
I need to have more like diner conversations.
Yeah. You need to go to more diners.
Yeah.
Or like coffee shops.
Yeah. Even though there's some parts of the movie where the dialogue isn't always great, that diner scene is like I was comparing it to Pulp Fiction where in Harry Met Sally, but like in a Quentin Tarantino-esque conversation where you're really hooked on every word that they're saying. Like,
and you're learning so much, and like they're really feeling it, like it's true to them. Yeah,
exactly.
So yeah, that's on a top list for sure.
I really liked the police corruption as a cost of doing business aspect of the film.
Yeah, like seeing it as in this way.
Yeah, and the mob acknowledging it as like, it's just a cost of doing business. Like, that's how we do things. And seeing like the difference of perspectives of how the mob operates versus how a lone wolf operates. Like each of them is doing things how they need to do it to survive in the world that they're in.
Yeah. And like with the amount of power that they have. Like it's like Frank has like specialty power where he is a specialist. He does his job and he does it well. And he can't, whereas like the mob has like numbers and real influence,
right?
So he doesn't want to cross into that because he has his thing. He's a specialist. So he's not really a lone wolf because he has his buddy Barry. James Belushi. It's so funny that he's James there. Anyways, and man, I was so sad when he died because he warns Frank, like, and he was just such a good buddy. Like, we didn't actually get to see him too much, but you could tell, like, they worked on, like, all of the jobs together.
He seemed like a good guy.
Yeah.
This is maybe the most likable that Jim Belushi has ever been.
Maybe. At least James.
At least James. Yeah. As soon as he became Jim, he became a whole new person. A worse person. I really liked in this movie how Frank's already like set up. He's got his money laundering schemes. Like we don't have to get into the backstory in this. Like, because a lot of crime films is like, how did you start from the bottom and make it to where you are? Whereas he's already started. Like he's already set. Basically, he's just trying to like advance himself a little bit quicker to where he wants to be.
Yeah, like he just wants to get all of that stuff. I'm gonna say the fucking quote from Leo. His monologue, because this is like him doing this, I feel like is the same as the one in not Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, Snatch, with the pig farm. Like that was that's like a close level. Like if I was gonna build a monologue by badasses list, this would be on it below the Snatch one probably, but I guess I can't really say all of the words here. Anyway, it was the 80s. I'm not gonna say him, but anyways.
You talking about some of the racist stuff?
Yeah. So this is Leo bossing around Frank.
Sorry, sideline too. Dennis Farina's in Snatch as well. There's your connection.
Oh yeah. I did see that there was a connection.
Yes.
Leo's like, you got a home, car, businesses, family, and I own the paper on your whole fucking life. I'll put your C-U-N-T wife on the street to be effed in the A by N's and Puerto Ricans. Your kid is mine because I bought him. You got him on loan. He is leased. You are renting him. I'll whack out your whole family. People will be eating them for lunch tomorrow in their wimpy burgers, not knowing it.
Yes!
You get paid what I say. You do what I say. I run you. There is no discussion.
That was scary. That was a legitimately scary.
And he was
monologue.
he was so nice before. Like he was like, "Hey, I'll get you a kid," like stuff like that. And then this was and the way they filmed it, because he has this very unique face, I guess. Maybe unfortunate to some, but anyways.
He's an older guy at this point.
And it was the 80s. People looked like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
But the way they filmed it, the way he's yelling in his face, and with all of this stuff you just said, was so badass.
I think all three of us were sitting on the edge of our seats when he was saying that monologue.
Yeah.
You didn't breathe during that. I don't think Frank would have either, because at that point you're this guy will kill any one of us at a moment's notice. There's a reason why he got to where he's at.
Yeah. And Frank's not really like that deep down.
No.
That's where he didn't want to become that. He just got roped in because he wanted this one last job.
Yeah. And then he's out.
Yeah. He's too old for this shit. Another part of just the heist, the big heist, was how they were figuring out whether it was a phone line or a alarm line when they cut into the top of the building, found the cables for all of the alarms and the phones. Yep. That was such a cool thing because that seems so realistic.
Yes, that I very much imagined that was another one of those cases where it was the consultants on there being this is how we would have determined which wires to cut.
Yeah, and you don't see that in other movies because what you do see
is cut the red wire. Yeah, always cut the red wire.
Either that or this is a classic scene again from The Dark Knight where the one guy's tripping the stuff on the roof. And he's like beep beep beep, and then he's done, and then the other guy shoots him in the head. Right. You don't see what's actually going on. We actually got to see them use tools to figure out this is the line, this isn't the line, and go through that process. Another that whole beginning to end heist scene, phenomenal. What a death by the father, by Leo.
Yeah.
I loved how he said, I could be your father or something like that. Or I'll be like your father.
Yeah.
The way he introduced that concept to Frank, and Frank's like, no, get out of here. But then eventually he's like, wait, I want to be a father. He's like, I could give you a kid.
Yeah, Jess called that too, eh? When we were in the adoption thing and he couldn't get the kid, Jess was like, well, he's going to go buy a kid now off the street somewhere.
Yeah.
And then it happened. I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I can't believe he called that.
Another little thing was when Frank was sneaking around the house to go kill Leo and the mob guys.
That was such a good scene. Yeah. Though, up until when he actually physically died, but like you said before, how quiet it was when we heard the synths going for most of the movie.
Yeah. So Frank's walking through, and then a lady sees him.
Yes.
And knows that he's there to.
That was the maid or something like that. I think.
I thought it was his wife. Or
no, I read it. I read it was the maid. Yeah.
Because she was watching TV there. I don't know.
Yeah.
But anyways, that's another.
And she just had an understand. They each had an understanding of what he was there
small
for.
Small details like that.
Yeah. Really cool. And he just left her. She left him, kind of thing.
Yeah. I really thought Frank was gonna die at the end. When he got fucking blasted by a shotgun.
Yeah. I'm glad he didn't, though. I'm glad he could walk away, because this movie ends with him and a new beginning. This movie ends where, most movies start, where the character is becoming, a fresh new person.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cool.
Yeah, I was of course he wore body armor.
Yeah.
Like,
true.
It's his character. He's ready. He prepares for things.
Yes.
He thinks it all the way through. Even, like, he thought, like, the chances of him surviving are pretty low, but, like, might as well wear body armor and blow up my
why would
I
be an idiot and walk into, like, the
Yeah.
lion's den without a little bit of protection?
Yeah, and, like, the way he snuck in and, like, made it, like, right to the boss.
Yeah.
Without seeing, or, like, he knocked out one guy. And
small little detail that I thought I noticed and then I read about and I was like, yeah, that was kind of a neat little detail, is when I don't remember the character's name, the kind of the second in command to the
I didn't catch his name.
Atagilia, I think. Anyway, so when the guy goes to grab milk from the fridge, he giggles to himself right as he's about to walk in, and Michael Mann said, like, think of something funny as you're walking in, and I want that reaction while you're walking in, like, you know, like you've got something on your mind that you're thinking about, kind of thing.
Yeah, and his, like, belt was undone, his, like, shirt was untucked, and that was weird that they were, like, sitting there. It was like Leo and him were sitting there like an old married couple or something.
Yeah, it was weird.
Like, that's where, like, the family aspect of their world was so true for them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like, he's getting up to get a glass of milk.
You want a glass of milk?
Yeah, just, like, sitting by the fire. They
have no idea what's about to happen.
Yeah, unreal. All right, time to go.
Yeah, I think that's it. This is a lot of fun. This is a great movie to discuss. Like, a highlight reel film for us to discuss, I think, on the podcast. I really hope that if you haven't seen it, that you go and check it out, because it's really great and it's probably worth your time. And I'm extremely excited to talk to you about Heat in a few weeks.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
We'll figure it out. This is coming out probably the 12th of May or the 13th of May. You and I are going on vacation the week after, so we'll have to see. Yeah, we'll have to see if we can film before we leave.
We should meet up in Mexico because we're going to different places, but we should meet up and do a Mexico podcast.
True. Yeah, but if this podcast, if the next episode doesn't actually come out in May, it'll come out the first week of June at the absolute latest, and then we'll have maybe 3 in June. So looking forward to it.
Awesome.
I'm really excited that Heat's gonna be awesome, and then we've got a lot of great stuff to be looking forward to in June. So
for sure. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, we'll see you next time.